I would like to welcome Ákos Kapui right now. He's going to talk about managing fast-growing engineering organization. Ákos is VP of Engineering at Shaper 3D, and actually he was a former engineering director of Skyscanner. He has 10 plus years of experience in building mobile products and scaling engineering organization. So Ákos, please, the stage is yours. Tell us about how to scale fast-growing engineering organizations.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. And today, as visible on the screen already, I'm going to talk about scaling and how to manage engineering organizations. The first thing before getting started, I'm trying to go into a case study about the settlement. This is going to be an imaginary case study, something I haven't invented myself. I had the luck to work with very interesting and inspiring people in Skyscanner, and one of the individual was Mark Logan, who presented this case study to me a few years back, and still it stuck with me. And whenever I try to explain scaling, I usually go back to this study and use this as an explanation, like how things could go if things are set and installed very well. So imagine that you are alone and you go to a different land, an abandoned land where you don't have anything established and you want to survive. So there are only just like grass and trees all over the place. And when you arrive, the first thing that you do is you establish the settlement. You create a small tent, and the very first thing you want to do is to make sure that you have enough food. So you go around the place and you find things that you can eat so you can survive the next day, the day after, and feed your family as well. As you get more settled, what happens is that you're going to build a house. Probably not as good as this one on the image, but you have to have something that can be used as shelter from animals, wild animals, as well as that can be used to have a larger family, and you can have a much more established life going forward. Obviously, this is not enough, and like fighting for food during the winter and during the summer, and having calories covered is not something that is easy to be managed. So what you have to do is you start growing grain, you have your own plants, and you have to make sure you have enough food for a continuous period of time. This goes really well, and you enjoy work. Sometimes there are bad days, sometimes there are good days, but the life goes on, and every day you feel like this is a survival method. You continue to grow more plants. You have now carrots as well, and the family is enjoying the variety of foods you can have. At a certain point, you also try to invest in like animals as well. It's not easy because when you are on the market and you are selling your food, it might happen that wild animals come to your land and they eat your animals as well. So it's always a struggle to keep the whole place in health state and having food all over the place. What really interesting when a neighbor comes in their city, and you are no longer alone because there is someone else helping you out. This is not just you fighting for food, but you can share activities, you can share work, you can share responsibilities. And while you are growing a lot of grain, a lot of food, and a lot of vegetables, your neighbor can take care of the animals. And what happens is your productivity is increasing because there's no longer just one single individual doing all the things on his own, but there are multiple people sharing responsibilities. While you are selling food on the market, your neighbor can take care of the animals. And if you are ill or you have an illness, then there is someone who can help you out. So there's a common shared responsibility, and the overall productivity of individual increases. And so we can focus a lot more on growing grains. So you double your fields, and your productivity and overall throughput of the whole environment also increases. Same happens with the animals. Like you have now a very, very interesting and good production already in this little settlement, a lot of animals, a lot of food, and things are much more covered. So what is interesting in this example, and if you continue this example, is that the productivity per person, so not just the overall productivity, but as you scale out the settlement, the productivity per person increases. So in the beginning, it was just you doing everything on your own. And when someone joins and you share the responsibilities, the productivity per person, per individual will also increase. So overall, the throughput is going to scale really well. And if you extrapolate this to an even larger use case when you think of like cities. The productivity of cities are amazing. Like compared to like villages and farms, like the productivity of city is exceptionally high. So if you think of like this example, the more people you put into this environment, the more productive the whole ecosystem will become. And it is very interesting because in comparison, what happens in most startups is that whenever you start to scale, the productivity per person will decrease and will drop. And if you put the two things on the same chart, what happens is like the productivity in startups is decreasing as you scale. And this is something that most people just accept. And if you compare that to cities, the productivity is ever increasing. And the question is why? Well, like, why does it happen if you compare this to normal life, like cities and villages and everything, it is a complete opposite what happens usually in startups. And before having an exact answer to this very question, let's dig into the dynamics of like how organization and fast-going organization usually work. The phrase and quote I would like to start with is come from Ben Horowitz, who is the co-founder of Horowitz Anderson, the VC firm, famous VC firm in America. And what they say is that when an organization grows in size, things that were previously easy become difficult. Specifically, the following things that can cause no trouble when you are small become big challenges as you grow: communication, decision-making, and normal knowledge. And these are the most important things I think like helps an environment to scale, and all are the ones that can be a bottleneck when you put more people to your organization. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to cover some of the thoughts around communication, decision-making, and common knowledge. Let's again go with an example. So you're alone, you are the founder, probably a company, a future company. You don't even know whether it will become a company or you're just playing around with an idea, and you are hopeful that you find some kind of interesting idea that could work really well in the future. What happens is that you do a lot of different things. You do you potentially, given this is a technology startup, you are writing a lot of code, you are doing design, you download a lot of different things from the internet, you talk to other people, you share, like upload the application to the App Store, you do a lot of marketing, you do app search optimization, a lot of different things that they usually in different large case companies are specific function itself. But given it's just like one employee in a company, everything has to be done by yourself. What is really critical here, there is like basically no communication overhead because it's just you, like you don't need to communicate with anyone else. And the decision making is also extremely fast because like one day you wake up and you make a decision and you just go along and see what happens. And if you go forward and like, let's assume that this idea, the original prototype worked out really well. So you are no longer just a CEO and founder, like working alone, but you are also working on a founding team and you hired a couple of people who share the excitement of this product and you work with them. Usually this CEO, this founder makes a lot of decisions. So like it's like him micromanaging this founding team every day, waking up, coming up a lot of questions, like usually that individual a lot of answers, and the decision making is super fast. Still, communication, there is some overhead because it's no longer just you, but there are a couple of people around you. But given it's just 4 people, usually potentially, if it's not like post-COVID situation, you share the same room, you know everything what happens whenever there's a problem. That individual immediately raises his hand like, hey, how should we solve this? And there is a very organic work and collaboration across people without any latency and every overhead. And then if you extrapolate that even further, and you have already a large environment, like probably you hired multiple engineering teams that established a large scale, around 15 people, you already have a mid-management layer, and the CEO is now still sitting in the middle. However, what the problem is that decisions are much further away from the CEO. He's no longer able to oversee all the activities. He's no longer able to see problems ahead, but it takes time for someone in the engineering team to recognize and then propagate that information back to the CEO. And the same thing happens when the CEO is trying to make a decision and try to make an action. Like even if he can make an action because he has all the knowledge, which was gathered through different type of communication, like communicating that decision back to the frontline teams and frontline teams and engineers might not be that trivial. And as I mentioned previously, like a CEO being a micromanager in the early days, it's probably a common thing, and nobody's complaining that the CEO is making a lot of decisions because it's his company, it's like his idea, and he knows a lot of different things, probably spent years around the idea. Well, what happens in a similar stage when the CEO is still making a lot of decision and micromanaging all the problems, like this arises as a common theme, as a problem. And the problem is not that micromanaging is a bad thing. The problem is that micromanagement usually comes with a lot of bad decisions. So CEO is no longer understanding the whole context. He's no longer writing that code. He's no longer in having all the information necessary to make a good decision. So it's not the problem about being a micromanager. The problem is that the quality of decision and the speed of decision start to decrease. And that causes a lot of trouble. I put together an interesting chart around this problem. Usually there are two things that matters in decision making, and decision making is one of the most important things that influences how startups and large-scale organization could work. So there are two types of problems: the low-risk problems and the high-risk problems. And when it gets to decision making, the individual or the teams or the company who is expected to make that decision, they either have low confidence or high confidence. When we start with the right bottom part, when there is a low risk and low confidence problem, like decision is not really made because there's low confidence, but given it's low risk, like usually it's delayed, but either that was not an important decision or it is made because given it's low risk, somebody can make a decision. Usually that decision is made in one way or another. The upper part where there is high confidence, but the risk is low risk. This is the sweet spot of startups, because like usually when you start early, there are no customers. Like even if you fail to release a high quality product and it gets broken, like there aren't any people using it. So like the risk is very little. So usually making a decision in that environment is quite easy. And given that you are like just getting started, you are probably naive enough to assume that you know everything. And that means that you have very strong confidence. You haven't yet failed in many areas. So yeah, you know, like this is the best thing to do, and there are no alternatives at all. So I'm like going to release this product to production, and it's going to work out really well. This is the area, the startup sweet spot, where usually people start whenever they're taking off as a startup. What the interesting part comes in is like when you already have a product, you have something like an existing setup, like probably you have a few customers, like risk is going to increase. So it's no longer like that you release something to production and then nobody's going to care, because you have customers, so the risk will increase. And if you still have high confidence because you know what to do, because you have enough information, that is when it becomes like a strategic decisions. And those decisions are probably the most important one to make in a business. And the bottom left part is basically the low confidence, high risk area where decisions are not going to be made because it is an important decision. So like things will matter. Like if you fail to release something good, then probably your customers will abandon you and they won't continue paying for your service. And you still have and you don't have confidence. So probably these decisions will be actually delayed. And if you set up for from different angles, these are the areas of low risk is where startups operate. So whenever you start early on, you are efficient because everything is low risk. The other thing that is important is where you should operate is basically where you have this high confidence setup. Every decision, you have to ensure that the people making this decision, they have confidence. Otherwise, what will happen is high risk will come no matter what, unless you not having any customers at all, and the things that you are working on are not important at all. So if you don't have confidence, you end up being in this low area where decisions are never made. So the question comes up if the confidence is so important, going back to the same chart, everything is green upwards where you have high confidence, and if you don't have confidence, it's red and orange. What is important is you have to have confidence. And how to establish that confidence? That's the biggest question on scaling an organization. And one of the easiest thing, and probably something that that might even sound contradictory, is you have to have an environment where people can make mistakes. And it might sound contradictory because like mistakes means that you are failing. However, what is important here is if you are creating an environment where people can't make mistakes, what will happen that they won't make the decision because they are not confident enough. If things go wrong, then they are not going to be punished. So the best thing you can do is to create an environment where people are comfortable making decisions, even though in a high risk environment or the risk is not low. It is important that people are confident enough that they can mitigate those risks, and even if something goes wrong, they can learn from that, and that helps them in most cases to go forward and learn and establish even more confidence going forward. Like when a company or a team or individual is unable to allocate enough attention on like on mistakes and learning from these mistakes, what happens is confidence will decrease. People will be anxious on like whether this should work or this shouldn't work, whether they're going to do the same thing, whether they should spend more time on testing whether this is the right idea. What happens is like basically decisions are delayed. The other thing is, which is super important in any organization, is being ridiculously honest and transparent, and setting an example of that. So if you're a senior engineer, a senior member of leadership team, it is super important that you are sharing as much data as possible. And the reason for that is, if I go back to the previous chart, people who are now in the front lines have to make decisions. That's like, if they're not comfortable making a decision, then probably what will happen that the problem is going to be escalated back to the CEO, who is no longer in a position to make good decision. So if don't have information because the CEO is hiding things because he's not confident enough to share that with the wider audience, then teams are expected to make decision won't have enough information to do that. So the most important thing is to make sure that you establish an environment that people who are expected to make these decisions have enough information to do that. But when saying like being honest and sharing everything is not that obvious, because it's like sounds easy when you say like be honest, but in practice there are a lot of different things that's very difficult to share. For example, the numbers, like the financial growth is not that good. The things that you envision to be the best thing to release turns out to be like not that successful. You have had a senior engineer in the team, and that engineer is no longer engaged and wants to leave. So if you are not sharing this with your wider audience, then we won't be able to use that information to make better decisions. So it's important that you share as much as possible and make sure that you set an example, because if you're not setting that as an example, then teams will follow this practice, and what happens is information sharing is will not going to be as effective as needed. And assuming that you are still effective in sharing these even like negative outcomes and negative performance, what is critical in later stages is when making a critical decision, you must understand how it will interpret it from each person's point of view and how its impact on the union of the individual. This is again quoting Ben Horowitz. So in the very early stage, when you have just a single individual, like a couple of people in your organization, like how they perceive a negative decision or outcome, an unpopular decision, or something that's happened that is not like good. Probably it's easy because you have a very good relationship with them, you talk to them, and given it's just a few people, their point of view is going to be homogeneous. However, when you scale and you have like 50 people, it's going to be different, like how product team perceives the problem. Yeah, like there was something you wanted to build, and you spend a lot of time building that, and then what happens is that it turns out not working. And like how are you going to share this with the people who spend a lot of time, energy, and time on building that feature? Like it is important how understanding like how people and how different teams and individuals will interpret a decision. A case study would be then, like, let's assume that growth has been stagnating. So you are in a startup, you have like already 15 people, and even though we hired a lot of good folks and you being successful in releasing product, the growth is no longer that exceptional. And on top of that, one of your senior executive decides to leave the company. Like, what do you do? Like, there are a lot of different things you can do. You can like just send an email to the people and tell them like, this is what happened and this is what's going to happen. Obviously, people will immediately assume that that senior executive left the company because the company is no longer in a good position to be successful. Because like growth was stagnating, so like immediately that the senior executive leaves, that might assume it's been related to the problem in the future potential of this organization. Even if that is not the case, like this is how people will interpret. And if you send an email, then people probably won't assume that you don't have an opportunity to understand and read their face. What you can do is you can work like you can announce this on all hands. You like you go to your team meeting where everybody is present and you just talk to all the individuals. However, sometimes you have to have like different narrative for different people because some people who work directly with the senior executive, let's assume that he was the vice president of product, like it is important that those people understand how this will affect their job. And there will be other people who are not that directly related to this problem, might be interested in like how this impact their role. And it's very hard to like share this in the same manner with all the people. And like in these kind of critical decisions, even though the decision was not something that you made, but happened to happen in an organization, the only thing that you can do is to make sure that you try to understand the different viewpoint and how this is going to be perceived by individuals. Otherwise, people will have their own narrative. They won't ask a question, but they will conclude in something that might not be that healthy. And at a certain point, they might just like assume that this is not the right place because you don't. The senior, like the CEO, is not sharing or enough information, is hiding something. The other thing that is super important in any growing organization is like how you build your team. So when you are just a single individual, like it's definitely just you defining the culture. But as you go forward and assuming you are in a high growth environment, you are doubling your headcount every 6 months. Like every 6 months, basically there are just as many new people in the organization as many you have had previously. That means that your culture, even though it was strong enough before, it is changing. It is changing because new people bring in new ideas, new principles, new ways of thinking. And that means that the culture is affected. And if you are not in control, like what type of people you would like to hire, what happens that the culture is going to just organically grow in one direction. That might be good or might not that be good. The other thing is it's always good to have a very strong investment in having a very, very high bar for hiring. And the reason for that is people usually come to an organization because of the opportunities and excitement that that opportunity, that team, that product can bring. And if you have an option to work with very, very interesting, very insightful, and very experienced people, that will increase the engagement. If you allow the talent density to decrease and you allow the quality bar to decrease, what happens that people joining an organization might not be that excited to work with these people because they don't know why they are here, how they could contribute to the work, and they don't see their share of like investment gets in return, because some people do better job, some people do a less better job. So it's important that like the talent density is probably your biggest factor and lever in creating an engagement. The other thing is, and when you're in startup, is it's very difficult to hire people. You don't have your brand. You are probably fighting with the local market with very established, strong companies. Maybe you are fighting with Google, Twitter, Airbnb, and the big ones because you are in a location where like it's very crowded and there's a lot of competition. And it's just like you can't follow the same practice other companies do. The only thing that you can do is you go after people in your own ways. You meet them, you talk to them, and you figure out a way how you can convince these people to join your organization. If you follow the same practices that you can read elsewhere, like it's not going to work out, because why would someone join your company if there are like 200 different opportunities the same way, same practices, same interview process and everything elsewhere. So it's important in a startup, if you want to grow, like you have to find the right talent, you have to be specific on who you want to have, and make sure that you have adjusted your like the way of thinking on how you would recruit these people. I promised in the beginning, after the settlement case study, that I will answer like why productivity of startup decreases at scale. And going back to the same slide, like the productivity per person in cities usually grow, while the productivity per person in startup usually decrease if size increases. And in reality, it's not that terrible how I presented on the slide, but what happens is there are a lot of inflection points in usual stages. So in this chart, in this angle, like the productivity, like tells you that if you are alone, like the productivity is pretty limited, and you start to add more people, you have probably like 10 people, and the productivity will increase because like you added more people, so you have like there's more time to code, and these people will do their more job because they have also time to contribute to the code base. However, at a certain point you will reach an inflection point, so maybe it's around 10 people, maybe around 50 people, when things are no longer that good. Like what you realize that even if you added more people to the organization, the productivity haven't increased. Like if half a year ago you have had 25 people and everything was great, and the productivity was high, and you added another 25 people and you expected the productivity to double, what actually happened is the productivity stagnated. And at this moment, like this red arrow here signals, what you do is like, okay, something got broken because it was working really well and now it's no longer working. So what your like intuition is saying, we should go back to the same thing that used to work. So let's make sure that we follow the processes and follow the ways of working that worked like half a year ago. However, the problem is that it's not about like the processes not being followed. Our reality is that those processes that work really well with like 10 people are no longer working. And what you have to recognize is that you have to fail forward, and you have to do things that will work really well with like 50 people. And it might not work well with 25 people, but like you have now like 50 people, and you have to figure out like how that organization is going to look like. If you fail, so what will happen that the productivity will decrease, and will basically get to the like stagnation, and then to further decrease. And even though you are 50 people, your productivity will look like it was a year ago with 5 people. And like even though like you managed to realize that there was like things going really well, and you managed to turn around the problem, in a later stage, for example, if you have 100 people, what you realize is like there are a lot of risk associated with your business already, because you have customers, you have a lot of money associated with running that business, and something bad happened, you push the faulty code to production, and everybody is freaked out because the service was down for like 3 hours, and you were not able to recover. And a lot of businesses, like a lot of customers of yours decided to leave the business because of that outage. And at this moment, what your intuition is saying, okay, this cannot happen. Like this is a bad thing. Like we should fix this, and we should make sure that we have a process that makes sure that there is like this cannot happen again. And this is like usually a case in every like organization that is on scale, that they want to make sure that whenever a problem happens, that won't happen, that single problem won't happen again. And what happens is that you create a process. And processes are great in like keeping things in in stability. However, they will affect your productivity. And if you create a lot more processes, more processing than that probably you need, just because you're anxious, you want to decrease risk, what will happen is that your productivity is going to be affected. And usually this red line follows that your overall productivity is decreasing because a lot of processes you create. So like the very, very short and basic answer to the question of like why productivity of most startups decrease at scale is very simple. It's everything happens very, very fast. Like you double or triple your headcount every 6 months. And it's very hard to adjust everything to that new standard. Like things that used to work 6 months ago probably is going to be the reason why you are slowing down, because those processes are no longer supporting you. And it seemed like a fair comparison to compare the productivity cities. However, it is an unfair comparison because cities don't double every 6 months. Actually, like villages usually grow like by a few percent in a worst case, or like in a best case. Just imagine what would happen if a city would double its population in 6 months. Like there wouldn't be enough kindergarten for your kids. There wouldn't be enough school for your kids. Yeah, probably the drain pipes or the sewer would be crowded. Like the whole traffic is going to be a disaster. Like, and in order to fix this, like you would probably need another like 5 years to rebuild everything. So like cities have a very, very important aspect is that they don't change very fast. While you are in an organization, in a startup that grows very fast, what you have to do is you have to adapt to every single change, and it's just difficult. And it's difficult because you don't know what needs to be changed, what got this stage to be broken, and what are the things that you should do in order to fix those. And if you want to keep pushing forward, even if like things are still not in a great state, you push forward, and you like things that probably would have worked at the stage you are today, like then 3 months from now, they will be again more like a bottleneck and more like a problem rather than an advantage on your side. So as a summary, like comparing cities to scale-ups, well, cities have a very stable environment. Scale-ups usually have a constantly changing environment. And this is mainly driven from internally growing. And that is the main change. Sometimes you have a changing environment externally as well. So there's a strong competition coming up. There is a new company. There's a new platform that Apple has introduced. Google has killed one of the APIs that was important for you. Privacy policies changed, and the way how you used to acquire customers are no longer there. However, the main thing that really is changing is the environment that you create with the people you hire, and the amount of fluctuation and the amount of changes you introduce. The other thing that is important is, while in cities you usually have a strong alignment on responsibilities, on scale-ups usually the responsibility is unclear. Like a lot of people joining, usually like you're building your mid-management layer while even building the top management, and people leave, people start, and there's a lot of things unclear, and you just don't have enough time to adjust responsibilities. So people who used to know what to do like 6 months ago, they probably don't know like how to adjust their personal responsibilities. The other thing that is exciting is like cities, there is a free market, free competition. Competition is usually good because whenever you have an idea of like this might work really well, that could be tested, and there are other people testing a lot of different opportunities, and the different companies, different individuals have different risk profile. So whenever you are like you as an individual, you're no longer as risk taker as you used to be. There might be someone else who take risk and figure out something. So overall, the cities have a pretty good balance of risk taking. But in scale ups, what happens is as you scale and then you go forward, there are a lot of things that arises as a responsibility and as a risk. You have customers, you have individuals, you have financial responsibility. You have to take care of problems that haven't been there. There is COVID arising, and there's a lot of things that you have to care about, and your risk profile is going to be different, and there is no one else balancing this out. So internally, it's just like a single risk profile, and it's very difficult to make sure that you take risk on one area and you decrease on the other, and that creates a different setup in scale-ups. And as a closing one, like focus on processes. In the cities and in environments, there is very little focus on processes. I usually use the example of being a butcher. So if you're a butcher and you have a butcher shop in the city, there's no one telling you how to slice a salami. There's no one telling you how to price something. Like it's ultimately your responsibility to make a decision about how you are going to sell things. There are certain things you have to be aware, like you have to be given an invoice, you have to pay for salaries, the environment has to be healthy, you have to clean your butchery every day. Like there are things that are like there and mandatory and required. And there's like the first time, and like having a stable environment and having a strong element of responsibilities. Usually these things don't change very frequently. And when they happen, they cause chaos. However, if you have a stable environment that might not be the best environment, but it's stable, so you can rely on that stability. Processes are really not going to be cause a lot of headwind. While in scale-ups, there's a lot of focus on processes, and this is driven by your thing. Like whenever you fail to do something, your immediate action is like, let's fix this. Let's make sure that you have a process for that. And what happens that you start to introduce a lot of processes, and these processes will no longer support you, even though they worked well at that certain point. You won't recognize early on that those processes is actually dragging you behind, and that is killing you. And that is the reason usually startups start to fail to increase productivity, and per individual usually decrease over time. And usually it's very difficult and sometimes impossible to turn it around. So that was my last slide, and I think I'm just after the time. So thank you very, very much for your attention, and I'm hopefully it was clear enough and coherent in terms of the whole explanation. So thanks again.
We have some questions here. First, Adam asks, if you give freedom to a team, others will think you don't care about them because it might seem you are not giving enough attention to them. What do you think of this?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So if like giving them freedom and not being available on like helping them out, it probably might feel that way. But it's like having them, like establishing an environment where they are comfortable enough to make a decision comes with lots of different things. It's not that they are left alone. They have to be a very explicit statement on what they are in control of, what they are responsible of, and what are things in like they are not controlling and they should accept. For example, if you are building a product for like video communication, like it's not great if you like tell the team that you can do whatever you want, because like that leads to anarchy. Like they might come up with a good idea or might not. Like it really depends on like the people. It's like it would be a high risky decision to allow people to do whatever they want. But telling them like what are the boundaries or like what are the things they need to achieve, and helping them understand like why is that important for the company, it's an important area. And giving flexibility and responsibility, as well as creating an environment where people can challenge you and change your view. It's just as important as ensuring that there is enough responsibility for frontline teams so they can be effective making that decision that they are the best to make.
Thank you. And another question from Esther. What do you think about scaling frameworks like SAFe or LESS?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different frameworks. I usually try to understand the concept behind the framework. So there are a lot of different things. Even like in my slides, there might be the different things that I learned from reading a book, reading a framework that used to work really well. What I'm usually perceiving is there isn't a framework that works for a single company. You always have to adjust to the problems and the circumstances you have in your organization. And there are even basic best practices like Scrum and such that might work really well. But usually they are that like effective because they come with certain flexibility on how you implement them. So you always have to think of like a framework is a framework, and it's called a framework. It's not like a mandate. It's a written statement on how things should work. It's a framework on how you should think about problems. And a lot depends on how you implement. And it also depends on whether that framework is really adjusting and fixing your problems that you have today. Usually I start from like, what is the problem? And how to get around the problem. You can have a lot of inspiration from frameworks, but they won't give you the solution. A solution is always tailored and specific to the problems you have, and you have to work a lot on making sure that however you implement, how you translate that to your business is going to be specific and related.
Thank you. And another question. What can you do as an employee if you realize the company processes are holding you back, but the company doesn't want to change them? How would you convince your manager to change, that change is needed?
It's a very, very good question. It's like, I tend to believe that as a senior leader, you might not be the top manager or a CEO or like senior executive, but as a manager, your responsibility is to hire people who are smart, rational, and capable. And that means that if you have enough reasoning and good reasoning around like why this is a bad thing or why this is a good thing, you can convince people. If you can't convince, there might be two reasons. Either the reasoning is not great. Maybe you don't have enough information, because like that might be good in short term, but that will affect like financially long term. And you are not in position. You don't have enough information to make the judgment. Like might be that you lack information. It might be that you the reasoning is good, the information is good enough. However, your manager or the senior executive is not rational, not capable of, or not smart, and it might be the problem. I usually, like whenever advising people whether they should join a company or not, I usually give a very single advice. You should join a company where you are absolutely sure you can work with someone who has decent experience and can help you grow. And you are related, you know him, and you have enough like confidence that that relationship is going to be very fruitful. And usually you might not be that confident during an interview. And what you should do is like ask for that opportunity. Like tell the company, I'd like to meet my manager. And you have to be like absolutely sure that you are joining a company where you are working with someone who is flexible, reasonable, smart. So whenever you have good ideas, good reasoning, either he or she is able to explain you why that reasoning is not valid, or he can accept and he can be turned around the problem. So I might not have answered directly the question. Maybe just the concept. So it really depends on like who are you working in and which environment. I tend to believe that our job as in startups and then leadership is to make sure that we create an environment where people can argue, people can have comfortable discussions and disagreements. And if the team consists of smart, rational, and capable people, they will land on a conclusion, whether it's a democratic decision or it's like a decision that you have to make in order to make a decision, because like democracy and democratic decisions are usually expensive. But at the same time, you have to be always like clear on why are you making the decision, so people can understand and relate to the problem. So if you are unable to convince your team, your manager, your company, the question is, do you have enough information to make the decision? Do you see all the possible outcomes? Second, is the team and the senior leadership team of the company rational enough? So you, even if the convincing is right, would they agree?
Thank you so much. I think we could talk a lot more about this topic. So if you would like to continue the conversation, you can join the Blue Stage session. And really just if you have any other questions to Ákos, please do ask them there. And also I would like to thank you, Ákos, for your presentation with this mug with your image on it. We are going to mail this mug to you. So thank you so much for your talk.
I have a lot more hairs.
Yes, definitely.
Lot more. That's
okay. Maybe we ask the graphic designer to just to.
No, it's just joking around. Like,
okay.
Looks amazing. I lost my hair a long time ago. Yeah, so I won't be able to join to the session today. Like afterwards, I have a team building activity actually in my home, so I'm joining the group just afterwards. But I'm available on various platforms, so feel free to ping me on LinkedIn, or you find me. I shared my email in the presentation as well. So whenever you have any questions around the topics, I'm very excited to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to have further discussions around this. So thank you very much.
Thank you again.